We are going to be discussing the best UFC fighters to never win a championship belt and how their talent was wasted. Or maybe it wasn't the case of their talent being wasted, but something happened to their career. I think in most cases, it's actually their talent was wasted. So we'll get into the reasons as to why these fighters were never able to put it all together. But without further ado, let's get into this. The first fighter that we are going to be discussing is Yoel Romero, who was a favorite fighter of mine. He still is one of my favorite all-time UFC fighters. But back in the day, Yoel was my favorite fighter in like 2017, 2018, when I first started watching MMA. Yoel was the guy. And I was convinced that it was a matter of time before he became a champion. And he got pretty close in that second Whitaker fight that a lot of people thought he won, including myself at the time. Now I think it was a draw. But, I mean, it's pretty obvious as to why Yoel Romero should have won a belt. He's arguably the most impressive athlete to ever be fighting in MMA. I mean, Yoel Romero was a freak of nature. He's the definition of a freak of nature. He was like 45 years old and the strongest, most explosive guy in the division, all right? And it just seemed like as he got older, he got even more dangerous. It wasn't until he went to Bellator when he just started basically Yoel's just a bencher nowadays. Yoel just bench presses before he fights. I actually don't know if that's the case, but that's what I'd imagine. But either way, he was the hardest hitter in the division. He had an Olympic wrestling background. I think he had won like the World Championships of Wrestling, which is like a big deal. You know, that's as good as you can get before you're winning an Olympic gold. He won that shit like 6 times. Okay? And so yeah, Yoel, most decorated wrestler to ever hit the middleweight division up until then. Just an absolute marauder, man. Just an absolute marauder. Now, if you're new to MMA, you probably don't know why he wasn't able to put it together. You'll probably just say something, oh, he got too old, or Robert Whitaker was just really good as well. But Yoel Romero had a crack. He got a shot a couple of times. Unfortunately, Yoel Romero couldn't win the belt because he was known for horsing around. And this is the issue with Yoel. Yoel was always a guy that would just horse around a little bit when he would get in the cage. You know, Yoel was someone that he's one of those guys that didn't want to give his all, because if he gave his all and lost, then he would really have to deal with the idea that, wait, I'm actually not the best. Yoel used to carry himself around like he had already won the fight. He had already won the belt before he actually fought for it. You know what I mean? He was the boogeyman. You know, he was the scary guy. He'd basically want to go in there and punk you and not actually win. As long as he could give you a scary moment, Yoel would be happy with that. That's basically what it was. Yoel would get in the cage and he would do things like he would shuffle his feet around and he would stand still for a whole minute. Yoel would sort of, you know, he would do these stupid movements, and the announcers used to say he's kind of lulling people to sleep. And in a way he was. Yoel would just go in there and goof off. You know, it's like you go in there and you spar someone every once in a while, and you can just tell they think they're 10 times better than you, and they're literally just messing with you. They're playing games with you, and every once in a while they'll crack you with a big shot, and they'll let you know what's up. Yoel was that type of fighter. You know, sometimes he wouldn't throw a single fucking punch in a round. Sometimes he would throw a jab at your knee after 4 minutes of doing nothing. Okay? And Yoel was also the type of guy that when he would lose those fights, he would look over at the judges and he would say, bro, come on, bro. Come on, man. Come on, bro. Like, he was so disappointed in the fact that they wouldn't give him the win. You know what I mean? Yoel was that type of guy. He would act so shocked, so disappointed. You know what I mean? After the Adesanya fight, even though Izzy did do most of the running, Yoel never ran, not once. Yoel never ran in that fight, not once. But Yoel still wasn't as aggressive as he needed to be. Now, I still think he won that fight. And anyone's saying, no, come on, man. He didn't win. Dude, if you're actually going to seriously argue with me on this and act like, oh, come on, man, you're still on this, he easily won. Even if you don't think Yoel won that fight, at least admit that it was fucking razor close and Yoel won that shit. Okay? He should have been. I mean, the short answer is that he should have been champ because he technically won that fight. but let's get back on track. You know, if Yoel just shot like 2 more takedowns in the Adesanya fight, if Yoel literally threw like 2 more jabs per round in the Adesanya fight, he would have won. And that's the thing. After the fight, Yoel gets on the mic and he's like, I don't know, man. He's like, bro, this guy came to run. This guy came to run. What is he? Usain Bolt? Yoel, dude, it's like, yeah, Izzy was running around, but it's like you didn't do shit either. And you could have, man. Because every time Yoel went forward, he had Adesanya running around in the cage like a chicken without its head. And that's the thing. Yoel would get in there, he would crack people one time, and he would have them running around in the cage like a chicken without its head. And it's like, at any moment, Yoel could have knocked you out. Sometimes you just didn't want to. Yoel fought like that. He had this mentality of, you know what? I don't even want to. I don't even want to, because if I try and I fail, then I'm going to feel bad about myself. So he was one of those guys, if I don't try, it's not going to look bad on me. Yoel was the guy that was guilty of tomfoolery. He did a lot of tomfoolery. He was sort of like Derek Lewis in a way. You know how Derek Lewis gets in there and Derek Lewis acts like he needs to take a shit. He's tired, and then in the 5th round, he does like a spinning wheel kick, and he's got Merab Dvalishvili type of cardio. Yoel was like that. He would basically go in there, he'd hold his stomach like he had a stomach ache, and then in the 3rd round, he would say, all right, let me actually finish this fight. When you would actually see Yoel try to win, is there a single time in history where Yoel actually pressed the action and lost an exchange? No. Zero moments in UFC history there were where Yoel actually fucking pressed the action, moved forward, and slung overhands, actually went after people, and they actually won those exchanges. So that's my point. Yoel, if he just added a couple of more punches, a couple more jabs, a couple more takedowns, and I know it sounds like, oh, but then it all adds up. No, I literally mean like if he just added one more takedown or a couple more jabs, that's it. Yoel would have been champ. But he was too cool for school. Yoel was too cool for school, man. That's why he never won. And that's the unfortunate thing. It's like, it was the mental game. Yoel had a mental barrier. I know you guys saw it if you guys are watching Yoel Romero back in the day. The Whittaker 2 fight, for sure, that there is something to be said about Yoel Romero. Was a guy that used to conserve his gas tank, and he would only go for moments in specific rounds, and then he would take the next round off. Fair enough. Of course, he was that type of fighter. I totally get it, especially like the more explosive type of fighters. They don't have like that Diaz cardio. That was one of those fights where he actually left it all out there, but there were those Izzy fights, you know what I mean? There were those other fights where Yoel Romero would just fuck around a little bit too much, right? And then he would look at the refs and he'd say, come on, bro. Bro, come on, bro. Why you fucking me over, bro? You know what I mean? So Yoel's the first guy. But let's get on to the next fighter, and it's Marvin Vettori. Marvin Vettori, another one of the middleweight greats. He's still fighting. Of course, not all of these guys are retired, and it's not over for Marvin Vettori. Obviously, Marvin Vettori never had the striking, he never had the grappling, and he never had the fight IQ. But one thing that Marvin Vettori always had that he never just utilized to the fullest was the fact that he is the toughest human to ever be in the octagon as far as the chin goes. Now, I know Max Holloway's really tough. Marvin Vettori's at middleweight taking the punishment that he's taken. We all know that if Marvin Vettori were to just put his head down and run at people like the local barge, take the Adesanya fight, for example. I know Adesanya is going to be like, a guy that we're using in our examples just because we brought up 2 middleweights right now. But if Marvin went out there, Marvin's issue is, because Vettori always had good cardio. He always had the mentality. He always had the strength. And he was sort of well-rounded. He was like a jack of all trades. You know how they say if you're a jack of all trades, you're not really good at anything? Marvin was a jack of all trades. So Marvin would go out there and, we could take you down. He could clinch you up against the fence. But instead, Marvin would try to go out there and win the outside foot battle. And then he would try to parry the outside hand, get outside in the lead hand. Marvin would get into this, he'd get in his own head. He would get in his own head. He'd start thinking about what his coaches are telling him to do. And whatever game plan the coaches used to write out for Vettori, he'd be too stubborn to stray away from it. So he was never able to make adjustments. But if Vettori just went out there on the Adesanya fight and stopped trying to box him and just fucking leaped at him like a good old fashioned, the way people would fight back in the day, like hundreds of years ago, they hype up the Spartans and all that. But the way that these guys would fight back in the day was they would just simply leap at you. They would jump on you with a menacing face. Marvin is the guy that would actually be able to make that work in today's day and age because you wouldn't be able to knock him out. Eventually, you were going to break. And so I always say Marvin Vettori is one of the best fighters to never win a belt. And he still can. The issue is time is ticking. And for Marvin, he's taken a lot of damage in the Cannonier fight. And I was saying before the Cannonier fight, the issue with Marvin is if he wants to become a champion, he has to be able to take 3 fights worth of damage in one fight. And you could argue that he took that much and more in the Cannonier fight, and he still lost. So maybe I was wrong, but I still think that Marvin was trying to be a little bit too smart for his own good in that fight. So my point is that Marvin Vettori just fought a little bit more like, you know, an ancient person, like a caveman or something like that. I think he would have a chance to win a belt. But let's get on to the next one, who I still believe is one of the most talented fighters on earth. I think it may be a little bit too late for him because I don't know if he's ever going to come back to the UFC, but it's Darren the left-hand Till. You know, Darren used to make excuses. Listen, I love Darren Till. He's one of my favorite UFC fighters ever. I still want to see Darren Till fight. I'm a big fan, but Darren Till's problem was, there were a lot of problems. I made a whole video on this called the biggest waste of talent in UFC history. Darren Till had a lot of issues. One issue being that he only threw his left hand. And when you would see Darren Till throw more than just a left hand, he would actually dominate people. Darren Till is the only person that schooled in MMA Dricus du Plessis in a round. I know that he got knocked out, Dricus that is, back in the day by Roberto Soldic, but Darren Till in the second round of their fight absolutely schooled Dricus du Plessis. He had his Dricus's back up against the fence. Darren Till was controlling distance like an absolute master, and he was just beating the shit out of him, elbowing him, stepping elbows, body shots, of course, the left hand. But those moments were few and far in between in Darren Till's career. Darren Till was way too patient, all right? And he only threw his left hand. You looked at Darren Till, he had some of the nastiest leg kicks. He would never use them with his Muay Thai background. People used to talk about he's a champion in Muay Thai. He never fucking showed us. Outside of one elbow against Kelvin Gastelum and a couple against DDP, there were not many elbows. There were not many kicks. There were not many knees. And that's the issue. When you would see Darren throw anything else but his classic left hand, which was obviously very good, it looked perfect. It looked like perfect technique, tons of power, because Darren was one of these guys that he had a very big frame for his division. He was always a taller guy, but he was also very explosive. He was sort of like a bigger Conor McGregor, and that's one of the reasons why he got so much hype on the come-up. Another reason as to why Darren Till was never champion, because I know a lot of people are going to be in the comments and they're going to be saying, what do you mean Darren Till, man? He sucked. Darren Till did not suck. He had perfect technique, okay? He was one of the fastest guys. There were issues, though, and one of those issues is that he never took his off seasons serious enough, okay? When Darren Till was in the off season, after he would have a fight, he would get fat, and part of this stemmed from the fact that he was cutting a lot of weight to get down to 170. He was one of the biggest welterweights. He had these brutal weight cuts. He had missed weight horribly against Wonderboy Thompson. And then there was always a question of whether or not he was going to be able to make weight, because Darren was one of those guys that would basically get on death's doorstep when he was trying to make weight. So obviously, when you're done with one of those weight cuts, you binge out on food, you gain like 30, 40 pounds. So he's probably got those habits, the eating habits from those horrible weight cuts. But either way, even when he moved up to 185, Darren Till still got out of shape in between camps. And when he first moved up, a lot of us were saying, oh, great, he's not going to have a weight cut, and he's a huge welterweight. He's going to be a pretty big middleweight. He got smaller from his first middleweight fight to his second middleweight fight. He fights Kelvin Gastelum at Madison Square Garden. He doesn't look completely filled out like a middleweight yet, but you could tell he's in decent shape. In his next fight against Robert Whittaker, we see a flabby, less muscular Darren Till, less full Darren Till. And it was obvious that this guy hadn't been bulking up into a bigger division. Some people move up and they think, well, now I don't have a weight cut. I don't need to do all the strength and conditioning. I'm just not going to do a fucking weight cut. But you got to do strength and conditioning, man. You got to be yoked. You look at the best fighters in every single division. You don't have to be yoked. But let's be honest. You look at the top 5 in every single division. They're all in extremely good shape. They're all lean. And what does that mean if they're lean, unless they're, the Sean Woodson types where he's like fucking 7 foot tall. And he's a $140. He weighs like 140 pounds in the offseason. Most fighters have a lot of muscle because they lose a shitload of body fat. They're trying to be as big as possible in their division. So they obviously have a lot of muscle. Darren Till was flabby, which means he had a lot of fat to lose. Darren Till fucking showed up fat in all of his fights. He had a lot of fat to lose, and he had a lot of muscle to put on to replace that shit. And he was never able to do it. So we saw Darren Till move up, and he got progressively smaller and more out of shape every single fight. And I believe that's because he was sort of letting himself go in the offseason. He was drinking. Darren Till was known for having a good time. Darren Till would go out, he would drink, he'd party, he would have his takeout, and Darren Till would show up, and this is another thing, the guy would get injured because of it. Because you're going from being disciplined 100% in your training camp, going balls to the wall with your strength and conditioning, your grappling, your striking, all of that shit, your cardio, and then you completely stop, and you get out of shape, you start eating shitty food, and then you go right back into a brutal training camp. Your body doesn't have a lot of time to adjust, and you get injured because of it, because your body's not prepared to go hard again. So you get injured. Darren Till would get injured in his training camps because of this. So this guy would get out of shape. He'd train again. He would get injured in his fight camps. And you always knew it was a Darren Till fight week because you'd hear someone got their ACL, snaps. Darren Till would show up with a broken knee, with a missing femur. He would show up with a spleen issue. Darren Till had a million injuries that he was showing up with. And, not only was he coming into his fights out of shape, but Darren Till would come without a collarbone, or he'd come without a fucking shoulder bone. Darren Till started showing up with missing limbs, basically, at the end of his career. He wasn't able to stuff takedowns. I think his takedown defense needed a little bit of work. Darren Till would do the classic penguin move where he would sort of put his feet together and not spread his base. Like Conor McGregor says, he would sort of go penguin mode, and people would just tip him over. And that was the issue. Injuries, penguin mode, out of shape, not throwing enough. If Darren Till, I'm telling you right now, I've just listed the most reasons as to why he didn't become a champ, and these aren't like he just didn't have a long enough reach, or he didn't hit hard, he had no power, he just wasn't a good grappler. Like, these are things that he actually had some control over. All right, someone's gonna say, if he had 10 reasons as to why he couldn't be a champion, he couldn't have been a champion to begin with. It's not like these were issues that he had no control over. I'm not saying, he had T-Rex arms, or Darren Till just was shit at grappling, because he was a nasty grappler. Darren Till was a nasty grappler, lad. He submitted Tyson Fury. But listen, Darren Till was an absolute marauder. If he actually just fucking added a couple more punches, threw combinations, punches and bunches, a couple of kicks, if he stayed in shape in the offseason, this man, I believe, would be champion. His technique was second to none. He hit really hard, too. He actually had, maybe not like one hitter quitter knockout power, but Darren Till would send people flying across the octagon. I believe Darren Till was good enough to have an Adesanya type of championship win here and there. I think that we could have seen this guy fighting Adesanya. I honestly do. I think we could have seen Darren Till at least fight him. If not win, I think he would have won. And Darren Till, he's this tricky one because Darren Till was one of those guys. He'd go in there and he'd get beat by Brunson, but, he fights a Whitaker and he damn near outstrikes Robert Whitaker in the tit-for-tat battle, which is very difficult. I believe Darren Till could have went out there against a Sean Strickland, a in-shape, dedicated Darren Till with his talent, and I think he could have beat the fuck out of Sean Strickland. Because in order to beat a guy like Sean Strickland, you got to be extremely fast, you got to have some power, but couldn't put it all together. So Darren Till, just a guy that was never able to put it together, man. Get on to the next one. We have Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler is another great example of someone that had all the skills, but just never had the fight IQ. Chandler had all the athletic ability. He was the most explosive guy at lightweight, just an absolute monster as far as his strength went. Like, this dude was by far the strongest lightweight. He's still fighting. We're speaking about him like he's a fucking retired fighter. He's still fighting. I'm sure his best version is not going to be the one that we see next week. But Michael Chandler, stronger than anyone else, probably the hardest hitting lightweight that there is. Maybe he didn't have the best technique, but just pure, rage and icy red. No one could fuck with Michael Chandler. I know Michael Chandler tries to play off like he's a nice guy and all that, but when he comes out to that song and, he's getting hyped up and he's bouncing around, this guy could fucking jump through the roof. So anytime Michael Chandler ever tried to take anyone down, he would topple them over. He would run them across the octagon. Whenever this guy would connect, he would rock people. He didn't have a great gas tank. He was kind of like Yoel Romero. Why couldn't he win the belt? Well, obviously, you have to manage the gas tank a little bit if you're one of these more explosive types of fighters, which Michael Chandler was. So he could have never been a volume guy, but if Michael Chandler was just patient, and if Michael Chandler just picked his moments, he could have been a fucking champion, man. I'm telling you. Now, could he have beaten a guy like Islam Makhachev? Maybe not, but could he have beaten Charles Oliveira? He got pretty close. He couldn't do it, but you just know Michael Chandler could have at least got back there. All right? I know it's not the concept of the video, but he could have got back there. He could have beat Dustin Poirier. I picked him to win. Classic example of why Michael Chandler could never become a champion. In the Dustin Poirier fight, a lot of people forget, man. But Michael Chandler was winning the majority of the first round against DP. Okay? If Chandler just shoots a takedown at the end of that round, okay, a minute before that round ends, when Dustin Poirier got most of his success in the last 30 seconds and kind of sat Chandler down with a big check hook, if he just fucking shot a takedown, Chandler, at the end of winning the first 3.5 minutes, he's taking Dustin Poirier down 100% of the time. Okay? He wins the second round dominantly, takes Dustin Poirier down easily, destroys him on the ground. It's damn near a 10-8 round. In the third round, Michael Chandler goes out there, and Dustin looks even more tired than Chandler. Chandler does try to take him down, but he rushes it, okay? And instead of just securing the takedown, getting in half guard, and Dustin's not getting up from that, Chandler goes for this big, slam. This, oh my goodness, look at what he's doing. He's going for this huge slam, this WWE type of slam. He's going with the high crotch. I think it was like a pistol squat. He literally did a pistol squat, which is a one-legged squat. It is a one-legged squat with Dustin Poirier. Actually, I don't know. Is it a one-legged squat? Either way, he did some insane, athletic, acrobatic type of takedown on Dustin Poirier, the hardest type of takedown to impress the fans and to have some sort of fuck you over Dustin. Like, yeah, I'll take you down however the fuck I want. And there's nothing you could do about it. And he gasses himself out doing this shit, gets put in a terrible position, and gets choked out because he gasses out. This is the reason. If Chandler had that's not the only fight. You look at the Gagey fight, Chandler arguably won the first round against Gagey, got dropped in the second. The third round, he's actually doing pretty well, but instead of trying to win, he's fucking out here doing Yoel Romero shit, man. He's sticking his tongue out after he gets jabbed in the face. Remember when Yoel was fighting Paulo Costa? And Paulo Costa's out there. He's punching Yoel Romero. Yoel's got his hands behind his back. He's literally eating jabs like Tic Tacs. And he's just sticking his tongue out to try to emote on him. Chandler was doing stuff like that in the third fight with Justin Gagey. Or the third round with Justin Gagey. If Chandler just reeled himself in a little bit. If he just reeled himself in. And Chandler was more of the, one pop shot type of guy. Because Chandler, I feel like if he had more of a Yoel approach, he actually could have been a champ. Whereas Yoel needed more of a Chandler approach. Yoel needed a little bit more of a Chandler approach. Chandler needed a little bit more of a Yoel approach. Pick his shots. Find the takedown because he's a better grappler, in MMA at least, compared to Yoel Romero. And I honestly think he could have been a champion. So it was really the lack of fight IQ for Michael Chandler. Who else do we have? Ciryl Gane. Ciryl Gane, man. Ciryl Gane is another example of just a phenomenal athlete. He's got the finesse. Ciryl Gane was one of those like LeBron James type of guys in MMA. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. They had him in the top 10 ESPN plays. Gane was, dunking on people, scoring goals. Gane's issue was he was too content. Gane never really wanted more. He was too chill with what he had. He was too content with what he had. He just liked to chill, and that was the issue. Gane was a guy who loved to chill. And what that meant is on a day-to-day basis, instead of waking up 8 a.m., getting the eggs, getting the freaking greens, even though you shouldn't be eating fucking greens in the morning. But, instead of making the scrambled eggs and getting the orange juice and getting off to the gym, Gane would roll out of bed, probably be like 2 p.m., and Gane would just, get over, hang out with his friends and say, man, what are you going to do today? Sorry for the French accent. It's a horrible accent. What are you going to do, man? And his friends look over to him and say, bro, you're a professional athlete, man. What are you doing here? Fucking train. And he wouldn't train. Gane would chill. He plays FIFA, man. Gane would freaking eat gummies. Gane is like, I imagine like his day-to-day diet is like gummy worms, M&Ms. That's basically what Gane is eating. He's bringing his controller over to his friend's house. They're playing FIFA. They're doing like tournaments and shit. And maybe 7 p.m. he gets a text from his coach and he's like, fuck, I gotta go to the gym, bro. And Gane goes to the gym. He's kind of pissed off about it. He goes home. Gane annihilates everyone in sparring. And that's basically what I had imagined. Now, obviously, I'm guessing that's not literally how it is, but it seemed like it. It seems like it sometimes. If Gane had I was about to say Mamba. If Gane had the Mamba mentality, bro. Dude, if Gane, who's like a fighter that's known for having like just the next level mentality? I know people are going to say Jones, man. I don't know. I mean, Jones is a psycho. Jones has that dark side, I guess, but I don't know if Jones is known for being a hard worker. I'm talking about people that are, John Jones is the type of guy that's known for like partying before his fights and still winning. Jones is very talented. He definitely has the viciousness needed to be a champion, which Gane's coaches were telling him he needed in order to beat John Jones. They were saying, we're coaching him to be vicious. And John Jones says, listen, no one needs to teach me that. That's something you have or you don't. But I'm thinking about who were fighters that were just known for being grafters, guys that were known for just working super hard, outworking everyone. Tony Ferguson, okay? Perfect example. Tony Ferguson, Khabib Nurmagomedov, guys like this. If Ciryl Gane had a fucking Tony Ferguson-like mentality, I don't think we'd ever see this man lose, okay? Maybe Aspinall catches him, knocks him out. Aspinall's known for training hard, fair enough. But Aspinall's one of those guys, he's one of those guys who keeps his head down and he stays in the gym. He's not necessarily known for being this guy that's just a psycho. Oh, man. People used to tell ghost stories about Tony Ferguson. They used to tell nightmare stories. Tony Ferguson's training partners would have nightmares about Ferguson, lapping them. Chael Sonnen used to get on his fucking YouTube channel and talk about how people were doing like, not hill sprints, fucking mountain runs. And they'd be in Big Bear doing mountain runs on 1,000 feet tall mountains. And they would have Tony Ferguson fucking lapping them. Tony Ferguson would pass them. They're almost at the top, and it's his second fucking lap. If Gane had the Tony Ferguson mentality, he could actually be a champion. And he beat Ngannou, okay? He beat Ngannou. Straight up. He beat Ngannou. That's a robbery. So he freaking damn near did it. But if he had that Tony Ferguson mentality, he's beating Ngannou's ass. He's not just beating him. You get my point. All right, Ciryl Gane, and a lot of people are going to say, oh, stop, bro. Because I know Ngannou's getting disrespected by not being put in the UFC's best knockout list and all that. Like, listen, we're just being objective. I actually do think he beat Francis Ngannou when they fought. Gane won rounds 1, 2, and 5. But either way, he just won round 5. Watch round 5. He just easily won round 5. But either way, if Gane had Tony Ferguson's mentality, who's stopping him? Outside of maybe someone that just knocks him out. Like maybe Tom Aspinall still is able to beat him or something like that. John Jones, fair enough. You could say, well, John Jones, man. Because the grappling is always a little bit of a weird thing. You know what I mean? Because like, okay, maybe you have that crazy mentality, but you're just not the most talented grappler. That's sometimes the case where Gane could just be really talented when it comes to striking, grappling. He's never able to put it all together. But forget about Jones simply because Jones only entered the equation like years after Gane was around in the UFC. We're talking about like Gane fighting Derek Lewis for the interim belt. Gane fighting Ngannou. Gane was around at the championship level before Jones even got into the UFC. I believe, a guy like Ciryl Gane with the Ferguson type of training mentality does enough to beat Ngannou on the night. Like Darren Till on the night. So you sort of get what I'm saying. But either way, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Until next time.